bayonets. And they were the ones who might have killed Dave Crockett and Jim Bowie because they went into the barracks and just didn't have them pounded. Now this Mariano Matamoros was a priest in Mexico, and during the Spanish, when they were fighting against Spanish for the Mexican independence. And he was Father Mariano Matamoros. He was captured by Spaniards, and he was captured. And he was executed. But this flag would be flown there during the reenactment. And I was having another flag that I had made. Another thing I want to discuss about is the firearms that we have. Most of the rifles that they used over there, this is a Kentucky rifle. This is my rifle, it's a 44 caliber flintlock. Okay? Use black powder, 3F black powder, about 30 grains to 50 grains. And this rifle is very accurate. This is what made the people that went to the Alamo had a better opportunity because they were on top. And when the Mexicans were coming in, they could be over 200 yards away and they could bring them down. Now this rifle right here is what mostly the Mexicans had. It's called a brown vest. This is a brown vest. This is just the rifle. And these were all smooth bore. Fire one ball, 69 caliber, and two 40 caliber balls in there. And it's like a shotgun cannon. Most of the soldiers would fire like this because this thing had a big kick. And these things were also to the wall and they would explode. And they were blind. So these were kind of very dangerous. Now they also carried your pistols. It's also a flintlock. Now at that time they didn't have percussions, which were like this, percussion hats, but they used them very rarely because there was no way that the Texans could get a hold of some of these caps to fire these guns. If you didn't have caps for this gun would not fire. So that's why most of I know that Dave probably had one like this, which is called the Crockett rifle. He sold it right before he came to Texas, and then he sold a flintlock. Because this guns, there was no way you're going to get the percussion caps. And then once you were on percussion caps, you were out of luck. Now, most of the soldiers had carry those cartridges, paper cartridges. They would buy cartridges, put the powder in, run the ball, prime the fan, and they were to fire. And that's about it. That's all I got to tell you. Hope you enjoyed it. If you want to see one, just pass it around.
Jack, what's his name?
This would be a cartridge.
His name.
Similar to what they would use.
His name.
Would have your ball on top of that. So what they would do, they would bite the end of this off, pour it down into the barrel, and then place their ball on top of it and throw it down. Rate of fire on most of these rifles was 6 rounds per minute. So it's not so fast.
You see it.
As was mentioned, when they were firing, the smooth
There's
bore
also some brown balls in there too.
would bounce around in the barrel after it was shot. So most of the Mexican armies fought in a Napoleonic style, which meant shoulder to shoulder and laid down a wall of fire. Now, out of 50 rounds, only 6 might have hit the target because they're going to be here, and it's going to go over here, and here. Some of the, if you did have a percussion, it is a rifled barrel. So your accuracy is going to be a lot greater. When you fire, you run a greater chance.
Or your flake lock will run back along too.
Right, yeah. Some of the early ones did. So, like I say, we're still lined up shoulder to shoulder, laying down fire, plus the cannon fire as well. Anybody else?
The one you brought over, what caliber is the one you brought over?
One is a 50 caliber percussion, and the pistol is a 54 percussion. I have. This is the size ball.
these people would use what they had, in other words. Some didn't have firearms, whatever had hunting firearms, they would go into gas shotguns. Wherever they kept from Mexico, they were doing the siege of the Alamo. And they got a lot of rifles for them too, so they were well equipped with that, but the powder was kind of low. So they had to conserve their ammunition.
And what was the speed of those balls?
The 69 caliber for the rings, I think about 69 caliber plus 240 caliber, 235 caliber round shots. They would just put them in there, it's just like a shotgun, but they would fire at this side. You cannot, these things do not have as you can see, these things do not have a place to aim at all. There's nothing to, so there you go, look at, leg shot, in other words.
About 800 feet per second.
800 feet per second.
And because it was soft lead, and because it was a slow velocity, it tended to have a tendency to bounce around like a pinball. Pinball is that much. So there are people who get shot in the leg and blow up.
Now, Mexico also had very poor black powder. Their black powder was not really as good as the one they had in the United States.
These were good for about 50 yards. Those, the good Kentucky rifles go 200 yards.
Wow.
So when you're going to hit, you got really messed up.
Usually, if you got hit in the extremities, a lot of times they would just amputate just to avoid infection of the
Yeah.
cell. So,
They made you anywhere else, so they wouldn't bother to take care of you.
and a lot of times they would load what's called duck and ball, which particularly in the Mexican army was fairly common. Where basically you have your shot. You'd also put other little tiny BBs in there too, kind of like a shotgun. Especially at very close ranges, which is when they would fire the volleys, you're going to be far more effective at hitting people. In fact, I think was it Travis that they found had one of the shot pieces in him that killed him? Was it Travis got killed by a piece of shot?
I know you got shot in the head.
He got shot in the head.
Yeah.
It was a direct hit. He was probably one of the first soldiers to die.
Yeah.
According to Joe, his slave, who actually saw everything that happened, and most of what we know from Texas, the Alamo history, comes from Joe, his slave. So we do owe a lot to them, and just I'm so thankful you came and were to represent the Mexican soldiers, because they were brave, they were courageous, they didn't want to be in Texas, but they were soldiers, they followed orders. Santa Ana gives those orders of marching. Santa Ana defies military protocol, procedure. He marches his entire army in the dead of winter. He grabs those poor little Mayan Indians. We never even seen snow before. They weren't dressed for snow. And lo and behold, when they're marching in Mexico, they come into a northern blizzard. And many of those poor little Indians really actually froze to death. But Santa Ana actually, he did the impossible. He literally snuck up on the Alamo. And as luck would have it, the day before, on February the 22nd, they were out, everybody in the Alamo was celebrating George Washington's birthday. So they were dancing, they were drinking, they were laughing, and yet only 20 miles away, at Lake Medina, they had advanced cavalry units right there. But fortunately for the Texans, there had been heavy rains, and the water was so high and it was dark that the cavalry decided to actually wait. But Santa Ana's army literally snuck up on the Alamo garrison. And then the siege started. 13 days. On the 13th day, they assaulted the Alamo, and they all died. According to Lieutenant Enrique de la Peña, he wrote in his diary that the Mexican General Castellon came across about 6 or 7 defenders of the Alamo. Possibly one of them looked like Davy Crockett, or maybe one was Davy Crockett. But he said, give yourselves up. I will defend you. I will take you before General Santa Ana, for mercy. He marches them up to General Santa Ana. Santa Ana throws a fit. I told you, Castellon, no prisoners, no mercy, no quarter. And he ordered them all executed. So, did David Crockett go down swinging? If you ever want to have a different topic, you can get Jaime and I.
You know, I would say that he went down swinging fencing, but he didn't have his fencing with him. He just got rid of that fencing. He had another rifle with him. So that's another story.
Rob, would you like to add anything?
Yeah. Obviously, my job is to represent the Mexican side, which is another side we don't often really get, because we tend to think of the Texan heroes, but there were Mexican heroes as well. One of the first questions I always get from my students, because I wear this for my classes, is, but Mr. Raymaker, you're white. How could you fight in the Mexican army? Well, Mexico is just as diverse a nation as the United States, and you had immigration from all kinds of different places. And so I represent a soldier which were known as grenadiers. Grenadiers really began in the 1600s with the Swedes as line infantry regiments that actually were known for their ability to assault fortifications. And in particular, the biggest thing that they had which set them apart was this. So the first modern hand grenades. They were made of iron. They basically had a little piece where you put the powder inside, and you basically light the fuse. And these guys had to be strong enough to be able to throw them at least 25 to 50 yards. Because if you don't, you're dead. All right. So grenadiers had special things that kind of people could identify. When you see in London the bearskin hats, the big tall stuff, that was to designate them as a special trooper. Number one, because of their status, and number two, because you wanted to get away from them. Because those are the guys who are probably going to go boom at some point. So obviously they were assault troops. By this time period, they didn't really use these a lot anymore because as muskets became more efficient, you're going to be able to shoot me far before I'm going to be able to throw this at you. But they still kept traditions. And one of the big traditions you can see on the top of my hat is the bomb, right? The grenade is still up there, all right, which is a symbol of the status of those soldiers. And grenadiers were actually paid better than regular line infantry guys. They were kind of the hand-picked guys. They were some of the best fighters the Mexican army had. And in fact, a lot of times when the army would retreat, the grenadiers were supposed to form a line to protect everybody else while they were fleeing. So that was one of the symbols of being a grenadier. You obviously had that status and you wanted to keep it. All right. Also another status, being an assault troop, they would carry swords. This sword in particular has a large fuller down the middle of it, which makes it lighter. So that way it's easy to manipulate, right? So when you swing it, right, this sword isn't super top heavy. So it was very, very good at being able to do what it needed to do, okay? The Mexican army still carried these. These were a layover from the French. Right? This is what's known as a briquette sword. Maybe if you watch like pirate movies, you sit there and you go, oh, that's just like the pirate movies we see. Well, because that's the kind of swords that they favored. They like stuff that was light, that you could thrust, you can still cut with it, right? It's still fairly light. So obviously most of the equipment that the Mexican soldier carries is a leftover from the Napoleonic Wars. Mexico didn't really have national armories capable of meeting the supply that their soldiers needed. So most of what they bought came from France, right? Or came from Britain. Like for example, they talked about the Brown Bess, right? The Brown Bess musket, right? It's a British musket. And basically Britain sold all their leftovers to the Mexican army. And then basically this is what most soldiers would use in battle, along with bakers and other kinds of weapons, leftovers from Britain. And the uniform is the same thing. This is obviously made to look like Napoleon soldiers, because at the time, if you wanted to emulate somebody, who better than Napoleon, all right? Because Napoleon was looked at as the greatest general ever by many people's accounts. So they wore basically things that were very French. The same thing is true of the hat, right? This is what's known as a shako. All right, shakos basically were, what Napoleon's guys wore, so you wanted to wear kind of the same thing. And so obviously it makes you look bigger, it makes you look taller. Your average Mexican guy is 5'4" or 5'5", right? So obviously when you're facing a bunch of gringos, you want to look bigger. So you've got the epaulets, which make you look wider, like you've been working out. You've got this shako, which makes you taller. You've got this little puff on the top. So at a distance, when people see you, they're going to say, I don't want to mess with that guy. I'm going to stay away from those guys. All right, so there was a psychological element to it. And so almost every piece of the equipment that these guys wore had some kind of function. All right, everything from the pants, which are drop trowel, where you can just basically just unplug them quickly if you need to go out in the bushes or whatever you got to do, to the cartridge box, which basically has multiple layers that overlap it so it doesn't your stuff doesn't get wet. I mean, everything had some kind of purpose, and nothing was just done haphazardly. And so one of the big points, I guess, that I like to hit on is that so often we talk about the Texas side of things, and many of us being Texans are so, that you have the Crockett's and the all the brave Texan soldiers. But on the other side, there were brave Mexican soldiers too. Many of which didn't want to be here. They weren't paid well. Some weren't paid at all. They hadn't eaten. They were tired. They were hungry. Many of them, the units were, a lot of these guys, they just picked people out of a village and said, all right, you're coming with me. So, they fought and died, and, they went through the same sacrifices that a lot of other people did. And so my job is just to kind of just show that every story has an alternate side. I think somebody had talked about that there's winners and there's losers, and we tend to look at it from the perspective of the winners. But there was a rich perspective on the side of the losers as well. The Mexican army wasn't an inferior army. It was actually a very good army. It's just it had obviously some fatal weaknesses in its supply and its command and other things. And ultimately, it wasn't the soldiers' bravery that was any less than anybody else.
Now, another thing that we put like that because when you fire black powder, you have smoke everywhere. And you can see that wouldn't help them getting hit by friendly fire. That's why they had all this bright color with them. That's why they had a big white hat on top. Same thing with theirs, the white pants, because they get spot their own people. Because we're out there and there's powder, black powder, cans of fire, and everything. You can't even see anything. You can't see anything. You don't know where you're going to shoot. I mean, barely. Sometimes you just shoot it anywhere because you don't know who to shoot at. Especially if you're out there in the battlefield. Yeah. And these guys were all like this, like this. They weren't like a fight a war nowadays. No, these guys were all in a line and coming at that.
It's a 13-step process to even fire this weapon. 13 steps. And at the end of which, you've got about a 70% chance that it's actually going to go off, even if you do it right. So that's why you had
What rank is that uniform?
This would be like a corporal. But again, they were the grenadiers, so they were kind of a cut above the regular soldiers. I wouldn't really call them special forces, because I don't know if that really exists. Maybe even the Matamoros guys would be more kind of like special forces guys. These were regular soldiers, but they were kind of, even in the army today, they still have grenadiers, right? They were like assault troops. They were kind of a cut above the regular soldier. They had a little bit more training. They were a little bit more permanent. So this guy in particular would be more like a corporal, maybe a sergeant, somebody who's been around a little bit more. Other questions?
Well, hopefully we'd like to invite everybody to come, but on March the 11th, you can put that on your calendar. It's on a Saturday. We're gonna celebrate Texas Independence Day for the 10th year in San Benito at the fairgrounds. And we would just like to have everybody come over. We're going to do the Battle of Gonzales, often known as the Lexington of Texas, the first major battle of the Texas War for Independence. We're going to have the Battle of the Alamo. We're going to have the Battle of San Jacinto, and we hope to see everybody out there. And have our come out and see our reenactors. They're going to take us back into history, and you're going to see the crackling sounds of the gun. Powder loading, flintlock muskets. You're going to hear the roar. We got cannons. We're going to hear them yelling, remember the Alamo, remember San Jacinto. Remember Goliath. Yeah, forget that. And right there at the Battle of the Alamo, you're going to hear the Mexican soldiers sneaking up, and you're going to hear like they did at 5 o'clock in the morning. And they're going to yell, Viva Mexico and Viva Santa Ana. And we just want to make it as realistic as possible, and so we can truly appreciate what our soldiers, our Texas heroes, our Tejano heroes are actually going through. But if you have any questions, thank you for having us. And we hope to see everybody out there on March the 11th on a Saturday at the San Benito Fairgrounds at 11 o'clock. At 11 o'clock, we're going to have the commencement of our event. 11:30, we're going to re-sign the Texas Declaration of Independence. 12 o'clock, we'll have the first battle, the Battle of Gonzales. 2 o'clock, the Battle of the Alamo. And 4 o'clock, the Battle of San Jacinto.